With its complicated lore, huge cast of characters, and intricate plotting, it is no surprise that Jujutsu Kaisen is full of unknowns. But the good news is that Gege almost always pays off what he sets up, so if there is something we don't know yet, we probably will eventually. In the meantime though, there are quite a few things that we are waiting for a resolution in, and in this video, we will be digging into a handful of the questions we have all been asking. Mystery number 1. The other Fushiguro. Going into the Culling game, one of the Tokyo students' major goals was to save Megumi Fushiguro's stepsister, Tsumiki. If you recall, she was cursed in middle school and has been in a coma ever since. But right before the Shibuya incident, Kenjaku woke her up. Not only that, but she was one of the many non-sorcerers on whom he used Mahito's idol transfiguration. According to Kenjaku, there are two types of people he marked: vessels, who he wants to consume cursed objects, and people whom he gave the ability to use Jujutsu techniques. He then plans to make these two groups fight each other in order to create chaos on an unprecedented scale. So we know that Tsumiki Fushiguro was one of the people that Kenjaku marked, but we don't know which category she falls into, or what abilities she might now have. Right now, all we really know about Tsumiki is that she is supposedly in danger. Per the rules of the Culling game, Tsumiki only has 10 days to declare her participation, and the student's goal is to get her beyond the barrier before that time runs out. But if Kenjaku intends to use her as an instrument of chaos, will they even be able to? Is she a vessel, or did Kenjaku give her an innate technique? And either way, what does he want her to do? Did he choose her specifically to target Megumi somehow? These are the questions that make Tsumiki Fushiguro one of Jujutsu Kaisen's biggest ongoing mysteries. But you want to know what's not a mystery? How to get plot armor content in your life. It's easy. Subscribe and notifications on so you never miss an upload, and give this video a like to let us know that you're here. Mystery number 2. The Gojo Clan. Bloodline is everything in the world of Jujutsu Kaisen, and there are 3 families that stand above the rest in terms of political power, influence, and innate techniques. The Zenin clan, the Kamo clan, and the Gojo clan are all descendants of the big 3 cursed spirits. You can't overstate the importance of these 3 families in the sorcery world. So why do we barely know anything about one of them? Almost all that we know about the Gojo clan is from its leader, Satoru Gojo, who needs no introduction. Through him, we know about their innate techniques. However, that's pretty much it. It has been mentioned that in the past, the then Gojo and Zenin clan heads fought each other to the death. And when asked if the rest of the Gojo clan was doing alright in the fanbook Q&A, Akutami replied, probably. But seriously, that's it? We don't even know if Gojo has any living relatives. Doesn't it seem odd that we know literally nothing about a group of people who are supposedly so important? And sure, maybe all of the living Gojos are so unremarkable that we simply don't know about them because they are just that boring. But until we actually know that, or any other reason for their lack of relevance to seemingly anything in JJK, there is still a huge question mark hanging over the Gojo clan. Mystery number 3. Toge Inumaki and the Inumaki family. The third entry on this list is not so much a mystery or a plot hole as it is something we just know very little about. In most cases, Jujutsu Kaisen does a great job of fleshing out its cast. Even very minor characters like Noritoshi Kamo and Natsuya Kusakabe tend to get at least a little bit of backstory. However, there is one notable exception, and that is cursed speech user Toge Inumaki. Aside from his cursed technique and the few facts we learn about him in the fanbook, like that he's a troll who likes to watch YouTube videos, like this one here, we know next to nothing about Inumaki. Most of what is canonically revealed about him is actually not even in the story. It's in his fanbook profile. And we might know about the mechanics of his cursed technique and how he fights, but there is a lot left to learn. For one, he comes from a known sorcerer family. Though they are essentially outlaws in the Jujutsu world, the Inumaki clan has an innate technique that is well known enough to put their family on the map. But if he was born to a family of rejects, how did Toge end up at Jujutsu High, and as a high-ranking and widely respected student at that? They can't just casually throw us a bone like that and expect us not to wonder about him. In all honesty, I'd bet money that the reason we don't know much about Toge is because it is just really hard to write a character who can't talk. Basically, you either have to have another character giving exposition about him, or you have to make him the POV character so we can see what is going on in his head. Neither of those seem likely to happen. So I doubt this is a mystery in the sense that something is being set up for a payoff later, so much as it is a plot point that the author doesn't care to expand on. But I'm still holding out the hope that we'll get at least a flashback or a glimpse of his family in the future. Mystery number 4. Even more hidden inventory. Very few events have impacted the future of the sorcery world more than the failure of the Star Plasma Vessel mission in 2007. Not only was the vessel Riko Amanai, who was supposed to merge with Tengen to prevent the evolution, murdered, but it inherently triggered both Gojo's curse technique awakening and Geto's eventual defection. But what's strange about the whole incident is that despite the massive implications of the mission, we never hear anything about another Star Plasma vessel after Riko's death. In theory, Star Plasma vessels are people who are capable of merging with Tengen, the immortal entity who protects outsiders from the Jujutsu world. By merging with such people every 500 years, he can maintain his humanity. If he fails to do so, he will evolve and could possibly become a serious threat. While the evolution he has undergone since his failure to merge with Riko hasn't been harmful, it is still curious that there has never been a replacement. It seems like Tengen would be in greater danger of evolving beyond his benevolent protector status with each passing year beyond the 500-year limit. So why has another vessel not been identified? That seems like it would be a pretty urgent matter. And while it might not be relevant enough to the story right now to address, I think that it might need to be soon, since Kenjaku's endgame is to merge all of Japan with Tengen. Knowing that, anything concerning him is about to get really important, and a Star Plasma vessel might just be relevant again. Mystery number 5. Whack-a-Mole. Way back near the beginning of the series, before the Shibuya incident kicked off, we learned that there was a mole inside one of the Jujutsu High campuses. Gojo believed that this person was feeding information to curses or curse users. After conducting an investigation with Utehime Iori from the Kyoto campus, they determined that the mole was Kokichi Muta, the student better known as Mekamaru. After that, the mole subplot became largely irrelevant and easy to write off. We knew who the mole was, end of story. But what often goes unmentioned is that when Utehime is explaining what she has found to the students, she states that there were actually 2 moles all along. Mekamaru was one, and since as a student he was under Utehime's jurisdiction, he became the main focus of the investigation. While the other mole is said to be someone higher up than the principal. This person has not been identified. Some speculate that this mystery has actually already been solved, and that Utehime was referring to Kenjaku using Geto's insider knowledge after taking over his body. It is also possible that the second mole was a member of the Kamo family who let Kenjaku take control of the clan, although if it was, that seems like it would have been a little anticlimactic. Nothing in that scene was directly linked to the mole situation, so if that man was the second mole, that would be a pretty disappointing reveal. So there's no compelling reason to think that the second mole isn't still out there. If that's true, who might it be? Is it someone we have already met, or a new character? Will we ever get a reveal, or did Gege just forget about the second mole after taking care of the first one? Either way works, but after seeing another well-known shonen tackle a similarly long-lived mole subplot recently, I'm kind of hoping we'll get the same sort of reveal of the second Jujutsu High mole sometime in the future. Mystery number 6. Utehime's curse technique. Speaking of Utehime Iori, she's actually at the center of another of the unknowns I'm most curious about. And yes, I know, Utehime is a side character, and I'm probably biased in including this mystery on the list because I'm interested in her. But it's not just that. I legitimately think that her curse technique has been teased enough times that it is relevant to something. We just don't know what yet. We know a little bit about Utehime. She is a teacher at Kyoto Jujutsu High, a semi-grade 1 sorcerer, and Gojo's partner in the mole investigation, among other things. But she's still a side character, and because of that, I wouldn't think it was that weird that we don't know what her curse technique is. I wouldn't be surprised if Akutami hasn't even come up with one for her either. So I only raise this point for one reason, and that is because he seems to already know what it is. In Utehime's fanbook profile, Gege states that her name, written with kanji that means song and princess, has something to do with her curse technique, which involves singing. And during the Shibuya incident, Utehime is very oddly name-dropped in a battle with Uraume when her student Momo Nishimiya says that she has to keep Uraume occupied until Utehime is ready to fight. Given that Utehime is already on the scene, that comment makes it seem like her technique requires time to prepare. And that only makes me even more curious. We know that it is related to singing, and it likely can't be used instantly. But what is it? It's easy to say that we will never find out, since Utehime is, by definition, a minor character. But why would Akutami bother to tease her technique like that if there wasn't a reason? Is her curse technique being hidden on purpose, and even if it isn't, will those hints eventually add up to something? If the future of Jujutsu Kaisen has a place in it for a side character to get a moment in the spotlight, that's one question I can't wait to get answered. Mystery number 7. Megumi and Sukuna. Ryomen Sukuna, the man that you are. No matter how you feel about him, the king of curses is never boring. Since inhabiting the body of a hapless Yuji Itadori in the series opening episode, Sukuna has done pretty much nothing but cause chaos, and there is more than a little that we still do not know about him. But to me, one unknown surrounding Sukuna stands above the rest. What is up with his interest in Megumi Fushiguro? Sukuna's fascination with Megumi was established early on, only 9 chapters into the story. Upon seeing Megumi's 10 Shadows Curse technique in action, Sukuna's interest is piqued, and he starts to ask rapid-fire questions about how it works. It doesn't seem quite characteristic of the bombastic Sukuna to pay that much attention to a combatant who's obviously not on his level, and yet he does. And that is only just the beginning. During the Shibuya incident arc, Sukuna senses that something is off when he mounts an attack with Mahoraga, an uncontrollable Shikigami, and comes to see what is happening. When he does, he comes across a badly injured Megumi on the verge of death. In a very telling move, Sukuna immediately heals his injuries using a reverse curse technique, saving his life and telling Megumi that he still needs him to do something. And this is when we know that what we saw at the beginning of the series was no coincidence. Something has to be up with these two. In light of that scene, Sukuna's initial interest in Megumi's abilities makes sense, but it still leaves a lot of unanswered questions. So what exactly is it that Sukuna saved Megumi for? We can probably infer that there is something about his curse technique that makes Megumi useful to him, but what is it? It looks like there has to be some kind of grander plan that Sukuna wants Megumi to play a role in, but we can only guess at what that is. However, this mystery is one of the more exciting ones on this list, both because its answer has the potential to be hugely significant, and because we know it is no accident. "I still need you to do something" is a pretty unambiguous line after all. So really all we have to do to figure this one out is wait and see. Mystery number 8. It's like that. This is another tiny plot hole that honestly might only feel like a mystery to me, but I wanted to mention it because, to me, it's just weird. Knowing how Jujutsu Kaisen's narrative tends to work, I have a feeling it means more than it appears to. In chapter 64 of the story, we are introduced to a new character who seemingly serves no purpose. Yuji Itadori's middle school acquaintance and maybe crush, Yuko Ozawa. In what seems like a fun filler chapter, we see the first year trio cross paths with Yuko at a diner, only to realize that she and Yuji go way back. They talk, and that's pretty much it. The chapter has no plot relevance whatsoever. We learn that Yuji and Yoko once had feelings for each other, but nothing else. It's a fun chapter, but that strikes me as odd seeing as JJK doesn't really do filler. Think about it. The next closest thing we have to a filler chapter or episode is probably the baseball game during the Kyoto Goodwill event arc, and even that is not really filler as it clearly fits into an arc with overarching plot relevance. Things that happen at the Goodwill event affect the rest of the story, even if they're clearly just for fun. Although maybe I am just jaded because recent arcs have been so painful that fun is a word I don't often use to describe these series anymore. But I doubt that Gege would take the time to write a chapter that is truly irrelevant. So if I'm arguing that chapter 64 wasn't just a fun filler chapter that wasn't meant to mean anything, what do I think it was? Well, that is an excellent question, and one that I think the only possible answer to is a convenient way to introduce a character who is going to be important later on. Yuko was the only part of that chapter that seemed like it might be setting anything up. So unless I've got this totally wrong, I think it is highly likely that we'll see Yuko again. But how? That I don't know. Some fans have speculated the dramatic changes in her appearance from middle school to the present had something to do with Mahito, but I personally think that is too far-fetched. So where might she show up again? The culling game is always an option. If you want to take a more romantic view of things, she might just be a future love interest, though I'm not so sure about that. She might even have reappeared in Yuji's life out of nowhere for a sorcery-related reason that we don't know yet. Or maybe it is none of those things. But no matter what, I just can't quite believe that Gege will go to that much trouble to introduce a one-off character we would never see again. Mystery number 9. Yuki Tsukumo. It seems a little odd that with only 4 special grade sorcerers in all of Japan, one of them would be so elusive. But in spite of her impressive power, we know almost nothing about special grade sorcerer Yuki Tsukumo. Sure, we know she likes motorcycles, Scatteroi Todo had a formative influence on a young Suguru Geto, and almost always asks people what type of girls they're into, but what about her curse technique? It feels like we should know that, but we don't. We've only seen Yuki fight once in the Shibuya arc, and we know she is incredibly powerful. But any details beyond that are kept hidden. As a result, we're not really sure what her innate technique is, how she fights, or how her power compares to that of the other sorcerers in the series. But the fact that she is a special grade gives me hope that we'll get some of those answers eventually. Fingers crossed that we'll see her put that mystery curse technique to work, defending Tengen from the forces of evil someday. Mystery number 10. Mama Kenjaku. I tried to save a couple of the juiciest mysteries for last, and this is definitely one of them. Few plot points in Jujutsu Kaisen have been weirder, and few unresolved mysteries in the series have been more immediately relevant than this one. So without any further ado, why of all things would Kenjaku want to be a mother? We had reason to suspect that there was some connection between Yuji and Kenjaku a while ago, when a panel of Yuji's mother with Kenjaku's signature stitches on her forehead surfaced. Coupled with a suspicious warning from Yuji's grandfather that his father Jin would die if he stayed with this woman, a lot of people's wheels started turning. But it took a while for us to get official confirmation that Kenjaku was in fact inhabiting the body of Yuji's mother. It was a wild twist, but it actually sort of makes sense when you consider that Kenjaku has always had a weird fixation on bearing children. Hundreds of years ago, in the body of the original Noritoshi Kamo, he created multiple human curse hybrid death paintings with a human woman. So is it really that much of a surprise that he would later enter that sort of motherhood? But the real mystery here is why he chose to have Yuji specifically. One might guess that he was trying to resurrect Sukuna by creating a child who would be able to serve as a vessel one day. Or just that he had use for someone with unique properties that Yuji's parents had the genes to create. Or maybe it is neither of these things. But what we can be sure of is that if he went to all the trouble of having a kid, that kid somehow fit into his plans. And not only that, but Grandpa Itadori's warning, not to mention Yuji's father's death, which we've never gotten an explanation for, makes it seem like he might have known what Mama Kenjaku was. At the very least, he obviously knew that she was bad news. That's honestly a mystery within a mystery. There are layers here. Why Kenjaku wanted a child, what that says about his plans for Yuji, why Grandpa knew that Lady Kenjaku was a threat to his son, and whether or not his unusual parentage makes Yuji half curse, or a death painting, or anything else. And knowing this series, I have a feeling that the answers to these questions are not going to bode well for Yuji. Maybe the real sorcery fight was the therapy bill we racked up along the way. Mystery number 11. Schrodinger's Nobara. Could our final mystery be anything else? There's perhaps no more obvious unknown variable in the series right now than Nobara's incredibly ambiguous exit. Almost 80 chapters later, and we still don't know if she survived the seemingly fatal injury she sustained at Shibuya. After Mahito used his idol transfiguration technique on her face, Nobara's odds of survival seem incredibly slim. But that moment lacked enough finality that a good portion of the fandom don't think that was a true death scene. Reverse curse technique user Arata Nita even tells Yuji, who was there with Nobara, that her odds of survival were above 0. So she hasn't been confirmed dead. Will she ever be? That's one of the biggest questions that fans are asking right now. It's honestly difficult to say at this point if Nobara will ever be back because the other characters haven't mentioned her since entering the Culling game. Theories abound about how she might make a comeback, but there is a contingent of the fanbase who is convinced she is gone for good too. So what do we make of her inconclusive last scene and the radio silence that followed? Everyone has their own interpretation, but no matter what side you take, Nobara presents us with one of Jujutsu Kaisen's most compelling unanswered questions. What I do know is that the next time we get an update on her status, it is going to break the fandom no matter what it is. And we are totally here for it. And hopefully you will be as well on this channel when the time comes. In the comments, please let us know which of the many mysteries listed in this video you want answers to the most. Personally, I gotta go with the Megami and Sukuna thing. And hey, if there are any mysteries that we haven't mentioned in this video, please let us know that as well. As always, I'm Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.